And thank you everybody for coming out. Psychedelics Today here featuring Dr. Mike Sapiro. And what's the title of this that we settled on?
Reality as a psychedelic experience, or something about finding peace in crisis, and this reality being a psychedelic experience.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's classic. All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a psychologist out of Boise. What more do we want to know? There's a lot to your story.
There is, but just want to make this brief so we can get to the heart of the topic today. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm a meditation teacher. I'm a meditation researcher. I work at the Institute of Noetic Sciences as a fellow. I also work for the Institute of Love and Time, doing a big study on time travel narratives funded by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation with a colleague, Julia Mossbridge. And I am on faculty at Esalen Institute, where I teach on transformation, the science and art of transformation, self-care, things like that. And I've been on your programs frequently, part of faculty with your therapist program. Today is going to be a little different, right? I'm going to talk about maybe sobriety rather than using psychedelics, not using psychedelics. So it's going to have a little different feel to it, I think, in the content.
Great. So we want to kick it off with the meditation that you brought forward?
Yeah. I think it's important now, because of the heightened level of stress we're all facing due to COVID, that we have embodied experiences in the sober sense, where we settle into our breath and body. So I'm going to offer about a 7-minute meditation for all of us, because I believe that is very strong medicine, especially while we're all feeling stressed in different ways. So I hope you all don't mind, but that's a part of what today's webinar offers. So I'm gonna just get the timer ready. So I'd like to invite all of you, if you don't mind, and even if you're not used to meditation or grounding activities, that you just enjoy resting for 7 minutes. We don't often get to do that. So if you wouldn't mind just finding a comfortable position in your chair or on the couch, getting yourself in a place where you can rest for about 7 minutes. And that means you bring your shoulders back and down. Have your body in a comfortable and firm, but not rigid posture. And feel the seat bones on the chair or on the cushion. And now as a group, there's a group of us here together. Let's close our eyes gently. And take a deep breath in, inhale, and sigh. Let's do that one more time. Take a deep breath in and sigh. So rest your mind in your body as the body rests on the chair, the couch. Drop your mind's attention into the body, as if getting into a warm tub or under the covers. Bring your mind's attention into the body. Feel the body from the inside out. Starting in the belly or the chest, moving outward toward the skin. Feeling the sensations of skin against the air. Begin to breathe slowly and deeply into the body. Slow down the breath. And tell yourself mentally, slow and steady. Slow and steady. And feel your body's response. Just breathe slow, deep into the body. The body expands with breath. It releases and relaxes with the inhale and the exhale too. It expands on the inhale and relaxes on the exhale. And as the mind wanders, as it tends to do, gently guide its attention back to the body breathing. Become aware of all of your body sensations, cool or hot, temperature of the air against the skin, any tightness, tension, or restlessness, any feelings of ease and comfort. Just note what feelings and sensations arise in the body. Extend your awareness beyond the body, the space of the room, the air around your body, the feeling of space itself in the room, color and light through the eyelids, and any sounds you hear. Extend your awareness to the house or the building you're in. If there are other people, sleeping dogs, animals, pets, just be aware of life living around you. Your body breathing slowly and deeply as you extend your awareness around you. Just resting in this present moment, life living itself as sound, sensation, light. Now extend your awareness beyond where you live into the community. Imagine all the people walking, working, some with masks on, others not. Imagine everybody going through their day in your community. Some very stressed, some at ease, some in need, and some giving. As you sit and breathe deeply, just imagine life living itself around you. May the peace we feel here be extended beyond us to the communities in which we live, the world. So take a deep breath here now. And exhale slowly. Another deep breath. Exhale slowly. without losing this embodied mindfulness, this groundedness. Just gently open the eyes. What we know from a variety of studies, just coming to the present moment is medicinal for the nervous system, for our physiology. The neuroscience of mindfulness and groundedness shows a shift from reactivity to responsiveness. Our hormones shift, our adrenaline and cortisol reduce, which is what we need during this time of really intense stress. So I don't know what you're feeling, but just bask in it if it's good, and if it's not, just breathe with it. There's not much more we can do. So before we talk about, psychedelic use or non-use, I want to just talk as a clinical psychologist working in the mental health field across a variety of communities, from the one I live in to a more national and even global. I was on a global summit this morning, offering meditation around the globe for those in need, and a summit called Never Alone Summit. What I know is that all of us, no matter how we're impacted, are heightened. There's a stress level that's heightened right now. For some people, the financial burden has become greater. Some people have lost their jobs, are in greater debt. Other people, the finances are not the concern, but not having contact with their family has been very difficult. I know folks who have had their parents become sick and die in hospitals, and they can't go and visit. This is tremendously difficult for people who are connected to their families, deeply connected. There's situations we never could have predicted. And so we don't know how to face them because we don't have a kind of a history of facing this circumstance before. For me, having a family gone through World War II over in Europe, I remind myself this isn't World War II. I don't have to worry about bombs dropping on me and houses collapsing. And yet the stress is still real for my body, my brain, and my psyche. So I don't compare to say this isn't terrible. I'm just making sure I'm not being hyperbolic about it. I'm making sure that I don't over increase my own stress. So it's important that we have kind of metrics that we use. So when our body starts to freak out, we're getting isolated and we're getting afraid, or we're really becoming overstressed, that we can go, do I have food? Do I have someone I can reach out to? What can I breathe? Can I breathe right now? Like we just did for the 7 minutes. It's really important that we understand those of us with mental health issues, anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of those are going to be heightened right now. So what I see across the board in all my patients and clients is a heightened response of their mental health issues. Meaning if we have PTSD and we're chronically afraid of something, we might be looking out the window more often. We might get startled more often. We might hear honking and freak out in our house. And we're like, why is this coming back? It's not coming back, it's heightened. Anxiety will be heightened, which is fear and worry about things coming in the future. Depression, which is looking back, having this kind of apathy, low motivation, that could be heightened, meaning we struggle to get out of bed. We feel more hopeless and helpless than we have before. Or we're returning to a place of feeling more hopeless and helpless. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's that our physiology and our brain are on guard because we're in a very unique, particular threatening situation. And so we have to understand that those experiences that we might have even worked through for years and feel stable, we might have been stable in December and now feel completely unstable and unwound again. That is actually normal. That means your brain and your physiology are working overtime to protect yourself right now. It doesn't mean it's a healthy normal, but it does mean you're okay. But you might want to get extra support, reach out to community, reach out to teachers, friends, and therapists who can support you during this time of crisis. And it does mean you have to be much more diligent and committed to these spiritual or health practices that bring your nervous system back down to more of a regulated state, meaning it's not dysregulated, meaning it's up and down, but within control. So there are breath practices, body postural practices, exercise. I ask all of my patients and clients to get a lot of exercise right now. So we have to remember to return to these practices, because that's what's going to keep us grounded and stable in this very ungrounded and destabilizing time. Any thoughts, additions, Joe, from what you've seen in the community, how they're reacting to this crisis we're facing, and some good and then not so helpful strategies?
Good strategies, like you said most of it. If you didn't say it, perhaps getting in nature, taking some time to be in the woods, even if it's just a long, slow walk. I know for some folks it's not possible, but I don't even know. In New York, do you know if Central Park is open? Can people walk through that?
I don't know. I don't know. We're just starting to be reopened, but the good news about Boise, we're surrounded by hills and we're allowed to be out in them. And that is, I mean, it's really ironic. I work in the health field, and for so many years, I ask every patient, please take time to exercise in nature or just walk in nature. And now it took the pandemic, of course, to get people out by the hundreds on the trails. So that's actually a blessing.
Because there's no alternatives. It's like, this is the only thing you have in a lot of cases, right? Like if you want to be moving and active, you can do stuff at home, but it's far more engaging to be just out, cruising around some trails.
And so so nature is one of the best medicines, and I can talk about the data and the research we have on what nature does to our brains, to our physiology. It's actually quite incredible, the difference when you study retreats in nature versus retreats in the city. Just looking at pictures of nature on your computer screen or actual pictures versus looking at pictures of busy cities does a change in physiology. The hormones are different when you're looking at pictures of trees versus looking at pictures of the city. Our nervous system gets dysregulated. It gets heightened in the city. Now, for some people who love being in the city, it doesn't always function that way in our own bodies, but almost all bodies will have a positive response to seeing trees and rivers and green. So it's very important that at this time, and you know from psychedelic use, when you go out in nature, all of those experiences and sensations are heightened. But the truth is we can get those experiences right now by deep breathing, walking slowly, and paying attention to flowers, to ants. It's really important to be present with whatever we're doing. Also, another thing I wanted to mention is when we're in a heightened stress state like this, we tend to overreact to small problems. So because everything seems so big to us right now, it all kind of gets full in a bucket, and one extra little drop in a bucket overflows it. And so what we want to do is start taking inventory when we get upset. Is this really something to get upset at, or am I just upset all day, or am I stressed all day? And so this one little thing seems like a big thing. And in truth, more often than not, our life are made up of little events rather than gigantic ones. Now, all of us have had big experiences, big events, death in our families, divorces, you know, things that are significant, but more than not, most of our lives are small events that when you have so many small events that seem stressful, we react to all of them with a 10 rather than a 2 or a 3 level of stress. So it's important for all of us listening and paying attention to this, that you might want to take inventory of your day and seem like, where was I overreacting, and where can I bring that reaction down through being present, through being grounded? Because if you overreact to all the little stressors in your day, you're going to be chronically stressed. You may already be chronically stressed. And so it's really important to recognize that those little things can be solved or let go of, rather than added to the big bucket that is overwhelming stress right now due to this pandemic. So I want to talk a little bit more about where we're at as a culture now across the world, and then talk about psychedelic use then. We're in a state that's called the liminal state. Liminal space. I don't know if you can see this, liminal space.
Yep.
This is a really good journal by the Center for Action and Contemplation, Richard Rohr, who is a Franciscan friar teacher. And he talks in depth about the liminal space. Liminal space is the space between. A lot of religious and spiritual traditions talk about the space between living, death and life, between crisis and crisis. So when people are in a state between, meaning they were just stable and now they're unstable and they don't know what's going to happen next, that's the liminal space. This is where most people return to prayer. Most people return to falling on the knees and humility because they don't know what's coming. And it is really threatening and uncomfortable to be in unknown, to be at the edge of the mystery. Liminal space is very uncomfortable. It is destabilizing and dysregulating. Somebody's working on their yard next to me. It's one of those liminal moments I have nothing to do with. We have to just be with the sound of the... So, liminal space is actually what psychedelics bring us to. It's that place of the unknown. It can be terrifying because we don't have a map for it. But right now, because of the pandemic, all of us are in a liminal space. We don't know what's coming. We have no idea what's going to be happening to our businesses, to our communities. We don't know what's going to be happening to ourselves and our own finances or our own stability. Our kids are at home for months and months and months and months. We don't know if school's going to start again in September. I'm a parent of a dog. I don't have to worry about that, but all my friends and patients do have to worry about that. What's going to happen in September if this doesn't end? This is right. We actually have no template for this. And that's a liminal space. This is where prayer and humility and surrender and acceptance are such powerful tools. But because we're already in this state of the unknown, adding psychedelics at this time could be really dysregulating and very destabilizing. Of course, I've heard some positive experience from patients and clients who are using microdoses or actually full-on experiences. But to be honest, the majority of the reports that I'm hearing are actually destabilizing, dysregulating, and very scary because using a psychedelic at this state can actually increase our anxiety. It can increase the destabilized state of our ego states. Right now, we don't know what the heck's happening. And so you add something like a psychedelic, which by nature dissolves the ego into the greater mystery, which usually those of us who are healthy or mentally healthy can handle and integrate. But because we're heightened already, we're adding a substance that by nature dissolves us. This is really, in my clinical view, not the right time to play in those realms. Doesn't mean there can't be something good about it. I'm harm reduction oriented, not abstinence based. So I'm never like, don't do it. But I do want to make a claim that right now, reality is psychedelic enough because we've never been in this situation before. You're seeing people with masks just my friend went to go rent kayaks in Florida, and her, I think 9-year-old daughter had to have her temperature taken and wear masks just to rent the kayak. This is a very surreal experience for any of us. People with masks driving their own cars, people running on trails with masks, not being able to hug each other, not even knowing if that's okay or not. Like, can I hug you? Can I touch you? What? I don't even know. That's destabilizing to what we are used to. So then you add a psychedelic to that. It can really dysregulate our nervous system and the way we're seeing reality in a way that could be too scary, too uncomfortable. We can't even hug a person after it. You can't really, except if you can get them on video, interact with them. So I'm interested to hear what our viewers are thinking about it, maybe hearing a few experiences. But what have you heard, Joe, from our community about their own psychedelic use and how it's either actually been beneficial or not at this point.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, folks, put some questions and comments in the chat box or use the Q&A feature at the bottom, and we'll get to that. So yeah, I've been hearing a lot. It almost feels like there's a lot more use happening now than there was before, because so many people are unemployed with not too much to do, or they get home from work and there's nothing novel to do like they would do with their friends, you know, concerts or whatever. And so they just do drugs at home. And I've actually not heard too many negative stories, though the large majority of them seem to be like reporting encounters of talking to the virus, which is fine. You know, it's interesting. Like we chatted about that before, and it's perhaps helpful, but it's also like, what are you doing? Like, why would you want to do this right now? And there's a lot of remote facilitation happening, which I think is a little questionable. You know, there's a lot of room for serious mistakes there. I've not heard of too many really, really difficult or dysregulating experiences, though, you know, perhaps they're just not presenting themselves to me.
And there might not be a whole lot of them, especially if they're microdose levels. You're just going to have an increase in anxiety, and that might, or, you know, you might have some memories or thoughts that you don't really want to deal with, but that's any experience you have that is using a psychedelic substance. From my point of view, and I'm going to speak as a clinical psychologist, knowing that there are remote offering, that's unethical if there's emergencies for health, right? You can't, do you know their address? Are you able to call medical services if needed? I don't want to be overly prude, but being prudent is actually wise. So there's a difference, right? And we want to talk about that it is actually important to discern what's the wise thing to do. So what I have seen, and here's what I do believe is negative, is an overuse of substances as self-medicating or just recreational drug use. We don't want to increase recreational drug use for the sake of drug use. That leads to dysfunction. We know all the downfalls. So I do hear a lot of people going, yeah, I'm just like, I can't wait to get, you know, stop work for the day and just smoke weed. I'm drinking a lot more. I'm taking more psychedelics. Well, that is clinically oriented. That's actually dysfunctional use. That borders on abuse of substances. So in that case, the work you and Kyle do is promoting psychedelic use for community transformation, personal awakening, for personal spiritual growth. And so when you start bordering, and of course, a lot of our discussions are, where is that boundary between recreation use of drugs, which people can do. It's not for me to judge. I'm just talking clinically what's sound and unsound, healthy, not healthy. And then using drugs for growth and transformation. We have to discern individually and as clinicians and those people leading sessions, where are our clients and patients using drugs abusively? And I know plenty of patients and students who are just using them recreationally, fine, but abusively, not fine. That's really unhealthy to start going to using psychedelics as a way of escaping this discomfort. So that's kind of where I want to go, is that we are using, not we as a gym, but there are people using psychedelics as a way of bypassing this incredible opportunity to face reality sober.
So we just got our first question here from Jesus. It is, I've had my first overwhelming / bad trip. Being outside in nature triggered it after starting to think of COVID-19. As a biologist, it didn't help that I understood a lot of ways COVID can be spread. So it just triggered this anxiety attack, right? Like amplifying. I think these drugs need to be regulated by a clinic. What is the best way to start researching these drugs through an education? Well, that's not necessarily what we're here to talk about, but there's a few institutions you can check out. A group in San Francisco called CIIS. We offer a really great clinical program at psychedelicEducationCenter.com. And there's another group called Fluence 8 in the East with Dr. Ingmar Gorman and Elizabeth Nielsen, who do some pretty great work as well. And MAPS, yes. And MAPS is a little hard to get access to as a student, but it will be developing in time.
Yeah, there are. Oh, sorry, Joe.
Yeah, we kick off an 8-week program starting on July 8 or 9 that I think is a really, really great fit for these COVID times.
Yeah, so I agree. I would check out these things, and there's really a lot of good research being done. A lot of what I'm presenting comes from clinical trials from MAPS, Johns Hopkins. There's trials being done all over the world, actually, in a variety of countries, looking at the efficacy of these drugs and the downfall of these drugs too. I am presenting today, how do we face our current reality and the caution we must have in using psychedelic substances, because any substances overused are just detrimental to good health. But what I want to suggest to all of us listening is being sober is so difficult, really. I mean, and I don't just mean substance use. I mean, we overeat, we oversex, we use porn and gambling, we attach to relationships. There are so many ways that we try to get rid of this discomfort of being human. And psychedelics are no different than any other overused substance. And so I want to present to you an opportunity, which what I've been doing is staying in a retreat, a personal retreat for 2 months, and just being with myself in the reality that is my life. And it is not easy, because you have to face all the things that come up in you, just as you would in a psychedelic experience. And being sober in this environment presents everything you'd ever need to grow spiritually and psychologically. And so why not use this time to see the beauty and the awfulness of our human existence from a sober lens? And that's actually the most difficult thing we could do, I believe.
Yeah, it's this interesting blend of like stoicism and realism, and understanding our human condition and trying to live our life with that understanding more present. Like I just had an interesting chat with Mike Crowley. Have you talked to him?
I have.
He wrote he's an interesting Buddhist guy in the Tibetan tradition who wrote the book Secret Drugs of Buddhism. We just got into it, and this like really classic term of like life is suffering. Like, he said it's kind of a rough translation, more unsatisfactory.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that helps a lot more for me. So it's like, yeah, the daily condition of our lives isn't that spectacular largely, but we can make it more comfortable and more satisfactory through practice and through, so sober living. And often, like, if you're just, jamming stimulants or whatever kind of drugs down your throat, like, is that really going to help you? Like, it might be fun temporarily, helpful temporarily, but is it really satisfying?
And when we talk about satisfaction, it is not about pleasure. I want to, as a Buddhist teacher, it's about acceptance of our reality without fighting it. And that doesn't mean it's pleasant. It means we sit and surrender to what's unpleasant without pushing it away. Pema Chodron has an amazing book I'll write right now that talks about how to cultivate this sense of true satisfaction, true joy and well-being, even during the most difficult times, because we learn not to push away what's uncomfortable. Pushing away what's uncomfortable makes us completely dissatisfied with the present moment, because we're like, I don't like this, I don't want it. I'll take a drug, I'll overshop, I'll do something to get away from this. And we end up cycling through more suffering, dissatisfaction. True, deep, long-term peace is through acceptance of what reality is presenting and learning to deal with the discomfort of it. And doing so soberly gives us the power and strength to do so in any circumstance without overusing any substance. Even if a psychedelic gets us to a place of deep understanding and intuition and insight, we have to embody that then the rest of our life. Otherwise, it's just a drug experience. And I don't promote just drug experiences for drug experiences. If you're going to do something, can you incorporate it in the rest of your life, embodying it in speech and action, behavior, and thought? But to do that, you have to be comfortable with reality. And right now, most of us are not comfortable with this reality.
Um,
Right. Do we have,
welcome the
yeah, questions
unwelcoming.
would be great. We have like 8 minutes left or something. So,
Right. Yeah. Would love to hear from folks.
mhm. Thoughts or questions from a mental health, clinical, uh, spiritual point of view, anything. Oh, let me put her name down. What are
Thanks for
y'all
that,
thinking out
Natasha.
there?
Payment children, yeah, amazing. And yeah, we updated links there, Kyle, for you if you want to check out those training situations.
Yeah, so maybe look up Richard Rohr and look up liminal space. This is something I'd encourage you all to do, and look up his work on liminal space, because it speaks very clearly to what we're facing as a community culture worldwide now, and how to really use prayer, meditation, and your own religious or spiritual traditions, which can include psychedelic use. A shamanistic practice can be included here, done wisely and skillfully. So we're not talking about not using, we're talking about being very mindful and discerning about when and what to use, and also be aware of your mental health state before you go into any experience. Because like, as someone commented before, you're using a psychedelic, you're in nature, and then your mind starts thinking about all the ways you're going to contract this virus, and your anxiety blooms and blows up into panic. And now you're stuck on a psychedelic experiences in panic. That's not what we're looking for here. That's not healthy for us. Okay.
So we got a few questions actually
Okay.
outside of the chat box. So Claire asks, would love to hear you speak about the intersection of mindfulness yoga / meditation and the psychedelic experience. I think you kind of just did. But yeah, I think they can be used skillfully together. It's not exactly a question. It's more of like a prompt.
Yeah, I believe in intersectionality, integration of all these practices. There's an ecology here of community, spiritual teachers, spiritual or religious traditions, good health practices, that we want to integrate all of these things, which include physical exercise, yogic movement and breathing, mindfulness training of the mind and attention, heart opening activities, prayer and community. These are all pieces we want to put together right now to achieve optimal mental health during a crisis. One alone is helpful, but all together is the most helpful. We have plenty of data and research, and your own experience will tell you this, of course.
And Natasha here asks, what about using psychedelics to help us see how we can support others and gain clarity for how we support the community in the future post-COVID? Like, theoretically, if you're feeling safe, maybe, but I would say you could do that plenty sober with a notebook or a big piece of paper or two. But any comments there?
Could you rephrase the question again? I don't see it on my chat windows.
It's in the Q&A in the bottom.
Oh, I see. Cool. Yeah.
But what about using psychedelics to help us see how we can support others and gain clarity for how we support the community in the future post-COVID? And this is by Natasha.
Mm-hmm. Huh. I don't know what it means to help us see how we can support others. You mean maybe have insight? What I always comes down to for me is, how can you best address your own wounds, tend to yourself, not selfishly, but because you matter. And out of doing that generally comes the flow of care toward other people and communities. So, right. And post-COVID, I don't know what that means. There's never a post. It's always present moment. It's going to be, life is always different. All the wars we have change humanity. All the viruses and flus we had change humanity. We think this is something unique, but it's just life living itself in a very different way than we're used to. But it's just the universe living itself through the virus, through us, through different business and community practices. Human beings will adjust and adapt. How can we find healing during this moment, so that as life keeps unfolding, we continue to serve other human beings? For me, it's always about awakening here to transform the community, regardless of what external circumstances.
Great.
There's a question about using a clinic for ketamine and depression during this time. If I have some clients and patients who do it, we actually have a few here in Boise, ketamine clinics. I will say without integrative care after, one experience alone, or even many experiences of ketamine, I don't see having a good impact if there is not help integrating what you've learned or your experience during the ketamine session. I've heard too often people talking about an amazing experience that they don't know what to do with. And Joe and I talk about this all the time. How do we get more integrative care after or post ketamine or psychedelic experiences? And so I am for using ketamine for depression. We have really good data on it. But who's there guiding you afterward? How to journal, how to implement what you're learning in your speech, your action, your thoughts and behavior. That's more important to me as a clinician and a healer, is making sure you have people on board guiding you through what comes after the dose you've taken.
Yeah, I'll say two things. It's less scary than a lot of the other drugs to me in terms of a clinical use. And totally agree with you on everything you said. And yeah, if you've got an acute symptom, this can really quickly eliminate the acute symptom, opening a window for transformation for you.
Yeah. That's
right.
right.
Just asked about undocumented immigrants. I don't really know how to really address that.
I love that question. It brings in social justice elements, actually, which is a really important aspect of my service. And I love it's hard to relate. That's a really important piece, because most people polarize. Polarization is between Democrats, Republicans, Christians, Jews, Muslims, this, you, me. And the truth is, we're all human beings with cultural contexts and history, ancestry that has informed who we are, and that it also informs how you relate to people. When you do psychedelic work, you see the underlying interdependence and unity between all things, but it's really hard to come out of that and not forget, oh yeah, I was racist once, but now I'm not, but I still have those racist tendencies, or I don't understand transgender people. When you're on a psychedelic, you're like, of course I do. We're human beings in a human experience with all kinds of interesting unfolding ways of being. But then you lose that, you forget, and you go back to your small conditioned way of thinking and being. So when you're really doing psychedelics well, you take the love of everything with you throughout your days and weeks and months, and you integrate that in learning how to relate. How do I relate to undocumented? What does that even mean? Who calls them undocumented? They're human beings. Of course, the political and cultural context calls them something. So you relate to the heart, to the heart, to the heart, and then you train your mind to see the heart in all things. And then you start working with people who are suffering. Undocumented immigrants are suffering greatly. They've been pulled from their children have been pulled from them. We know what we've been facing. How do you add the deepest heart, love, and compassion when you start relating? I really love that question, because it's really about how do we relate to people we're different to or don't understand. And that is what psychedelics have given beautifully to humanity. But we need to practice loving afterward. I think we're probably close to an edge here of time, I'm guessing.
Yeah, let's call it time. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this, and it's really helpful for me. And I hope it was helpful for everybody else. And can you tell us how to find you on the internet?
Oh, sure, yeah. Michael Sapiro, I guess I can write it. michaelsapiro.com. You can look up noetic.org, Institute for Love and Time.
And let's not forget the restaurant for when people are visiting Boise.
Oh yeah, Lime and a Coconut, the food truck. So those three at the top, and Esalen, of course, and Psychedelics Today. I love being a part of your guys' program. What did Blake write? Love and do as you will. If you keep silence, do it out of love. If you cry out, do it out of love. Yes.
This is fantastic timing. I'm in the middle of Augustine right now. Very fascinating timing, Blake.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. And when this comes out on YouTube, let's spread it around, and I'll be back sometime. So.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your retreat, and thanks for coming out.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.